Hello everyone, my topic today talks about the importance of translation and interpretation in legal settings. This is a comparative analysis of the Philippines and international context. Let's define what is translation and interpretation. Translation defined as the process of converting written legal documents from one language to another. So it means assume that in a court decision there is a written court decision that was written in English. This may need to be translated into a dialect for a client who doesn't speak or understand in English. So that is translation. While interpretation defined as the process of converting spoken language during the legal proceeding from one language to another in real time. So, for example, during a trial, if a witness from here in our province, Quezon del Sur, gives his testimony in Manobo or Hiligaynon, there must be an interpreter and that translate the testimony into a language that everyone in the court can understand. Okay? So, in the Philippine context, in translation and interpretation, under Republic Act number 9184, it governs the act that governs procurement processes, including translation services for the public projects, ensuring compliance with quality standard. So this includes translating procurement documents, notices, and guidelines into a local languages or a dialect, especially where a region where English or a Filipino may not be the primary language. And under the Department of Justice guidelines, includes provision for the use of the interpreters in legal proceedings, especially for non-native speakers. So, for example, interpreters must be proficient in both the source and target language to prevent, of course, misinterpretation in court cases. For the court interpreters and legal translators, court interpreters facilitate communication between the non-native speakers and the court, accurate understanding of the legal proceeding. So, for instance, in a case involving indigenous person who speak local dialect, an interpreter is necessary to ensure that the person understands the proceeding. For the legal translators, translate legal documents required for court cases, including contracts and legal beliefs. So, assume that there is a legal contract which is written in English. It may need to be translated into Manubo or Hiligaynon for a client which is residing in Quezon del Sur to ensure that they fully understand the terms that was written, right? And the challenges in the Philippine context, first is of course, we have a linguistic diversity. Of course, in our country, it has 170 language and dialect, which can complicate legal translation and interpretation. So it is a big challenge in finding interpreters who can accurately translate less common dialects, right? And the quality and accuracy concerns. Inaccurate translation can lead to misinterpretation, affecting legal fairness and outcome. So let's say if there is an errors in translation, it can lead to severe legal consequences. For instance, if a legal term is mistranslated, legal terms which is mistranslated, it could alter the meaning of a contract, potentially leading to a legal dispute. For the trainings and certification, there is a need for standardized training and certification for legal interpreters and translators to ensure high quality services. So, without standardized certification, the quality of the interpretation can vary significantly. Of course, establishing a rigorous certification processes, which is similar to those in other countries, would enhance the quality of legal interpretation here in our country. Now, the international perspective. Under the United States certification, it requires certification for legal interpreters such as the Federal Court Interpreter Certification Examination, or the FCICE, and the state level certification. So in United States, certified interpreters are required in federal courts to ensure that non-English speakers receive the same level of justice as the English speakers. And for the European Union Directive, the adheres to the European Council Directive 2010/64/European Union, ensuring the right to interpretation and translation in criminal proceeding, which is the European Union Directive mandates that all defendants have access to qualified interpreters during the criminal proceeding, regardless of their language. For the Canada certification, offers certification through the Association of Translators and Interpreters of Ontario, or ATIO, and other provincial bodies. The certification bodies like ATIO ensure that interpreters and translators meet high standard, which is crucial for maintaining justice in a multilingual society. Now let's move on to the comparative analysis. Rigorous certification training. So international legal translation and interpretation practices may have more stringent certification and training requirements for professional compared to the country. So internationally, there may be more strict requirements for interpreter certification rather than here in our country. Potentially, mas mataas yung level of accuracy and reliability in legal proceedings. For the linguistic diversity challenges, the Philippines may face more challenges in legal translation and interpretation due to its linguistic diversity with multiple native languages and dialects. Yes, it's true because we are diverse when it comes to linguistic. Next is emphasis on accuracy and effectiveness. Both the Philippines and international context emphasize the critical need for accurate and effective translation and interpretation to ensure justice in legal proceeding. Now, I have here a sample case study analysis which illustrate how dialect interpretation can significantly impact the court decision and the overall integrity of the legal process. So I will not read anymore the what was being presented. I will give you the summarize of this case. So which is in the case of GR number 117485/86 that was in year 1996. The accused named Melchor Istumaka Igarke. He was a native of the Philippines who spoke a local dialect which is a Waray. The issue arose because the trial court read the charges against him in English, which the accused did not fully understand. Hindi naintindihan ng accused yung charges against him. The court failed to provide a translation of the charges into Waray, which is the dialect familiar to the accused. And with that, the case was dismissed by the Supreme Court due to the violation of the accused's constitutional rights to be properly informed of the nature and the cause of the accusation against him. So, this case illustrates how dialect interpretation can significantly impact the court decision and the overall integrity of the legal process. For the implication and recommendation, first is the fair trials. Effective translation and interpretation are essential for ensuring fair trials and legal proceeding, particularly for non-native speakers. So, for instance, if a defendant does not understand the legal proceeding due to the language barrier, they cannot adequately defend themselves. Potentially, it may lead to a miscarriage of justice. Standardized training. Develop and implement standardized training and certification program for legal interpreters and translators. So, maybe establish a formal training programs for the interpreters and translators. Possibly, kailangan na nakafollow doon sa international certification system to ensure that they are well equipped to handle legal translation. And for the quality control, establish quality control measures to ensure the accuracy and reliability of the legal translation and interpretations. So, kailangan there must be an implementation of a regular assessment to ensure that the interpreters maintain a high level of accuracy and reliability. And for the best practices, integrate best practices from international models to address current challenges in the Philippine legal system rather. No? Of course, let's incorporate best practices from saan pa? Of course, doon sa international models which create a system that ensures fair and accurate legal translation and interpretation here in our country. So, for the conclusion, the summary of key points, first one is the importance of translation and interpretation. Of course, these services are essential to ensure justice in legal settings, especially in our country, which is a multilingual society. Challenges in the Philippines, the country linguistic diversity and lack of standardized training pose significant challenges to effective legal translation and interpretation. And last, international insight. Adopting best practices from international context could help the Philippines address these challenges and improve the quality of legal translation and interpretation. So, by improving the current system here in our country, the Philippines can ensure that all legal proceedings are fair, regardless of language barriers, ultimately leading to have a more just and legal system. So, that ends my discussion, and here is the list of my reference that was kinuha ko doon sa iba't ibang sources to have the content of my report. So, thank you and God bless.